Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for Ask the Expert North Texas. I'm Kristen Diaz.
I'm David Rankin. What's the old saying? If you can't beat them, join them. Sure looks that way with a super merger that just came out this morning in the sports world. The two major professional golf circuits have fought over the top players, and now they're playing nice. The PGA Tour agreed to a merger with LIV Golf. That means they would drop their lawsuits against each other, and they will combine again into one worldwide gigantic tour. On today's Ask the Expert, we're joined by Joe Pogge. He's the host of the Smokin Joe's Driving Range radio show in Houston. He is in the KRLD Zoom Room. Joe, thank you so much for the time.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
These two organizations have been fighting constantly since LIV came on the scene 2 years ago. Is this just something that had to become inevitable?
Well, I've been saying it on my radio show. Yes, they needed to get people in a room and sit down and have a conversation. I believe that there's a need for another tour that would maybe be from the 40 to 50-year-olds, because at that point, these young guns, they just can't keep up with them. Their strength and their club head speed and everything. So I thought there definitely was, but I said, nothing is going to happen until they get Greg Norman out of the room. So I just heard, they just had an interview with the Saudi Arabians, and which, by the way, folks, this is a deal. It's not a tour, David. It's still to be defined, but this is a deal between the PGA Tour, the European Tour, and the PIF. Well, folks, the PIF is one thing. It is the Saudi Arabians. That is what it is. And today, reality is money runs the world. And the Saudi Arabians bought themselves into this game. So, and what they're going to do, we're not sure if it's going to be a tour, if it's going to be what exactly it is. That's still a lot of things are up in the air. We do know that this new entity will be a for-profit a company, organization, whereas the PGA Tour is a nonprofit organization. The other thing that's amazing, David, if I start rambling too much, just come. Nobody, and this blows my mind, nobody in the world had any idea this announcement was coming today. Nobody. The players didn't know. Greg Norman, the Saudi Arabians did an interview. They go, and Greg Norman's involved. He goes, he was told this morning.
Wow. So with the rapid response of this, has it been mixed reaction? Are people happy about this? Are they upset?
I think everybody's in a state of shock, and they're trying to wait to see, tell us, all they've basically have told us is that there's a partnership has been created, and that the lawsuit and the litigations have been stopped. That's the only two things. No one has said, okay, what is this? There is two other things they said. The LIV Tour and the PGA Tour and the DP Tour will fulfill their 2023 schedules. And at the end of this year, the LIV players will have an opportunity to rejoin their appropriate tours.
So what about all the guaranteed money that some players like Phil Mickelson and Brooks Koepka got?
Okay, from my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, they were contracted a guaranteed set of money, let's say $200 million. Well, there's a definitive number of years that guarantee was for. So Phil had to say, I'll do $200 million for 5 years, let's say, okay? So if this announcement today, I would assume that somewhere in the contract, the Saudi Arabians will say, you're going to get paid for 2 years. Or a year, whatever it has been, and going forward. See, that's the other question that's coming up. All those PGA Tour players that the PGA Tour said to them, don't go, stay, don't go. And out of loyalty, they stayed, but they passed on 50 million, 70 million, 100 million. How do you make it up to them? If you invite the LIV guys back, how do you penalize them without making your tour players go, God, those guys just got to eat the sundae and the sherry and everything on top?
Yeah. You said money rules. How much money are we potentially looking at now for the future of these players?
Well, that's the next coin that nobody knows. I mean, the LIV Tour, the way Greg Norman had set it up, it was basically these guys are winning the lottery every week, every time they teed it up. They got their guarantee money. Then they had huge purses. Like one of the purses they had at the Doral last year was $50 million. A big PGA Tour right now is 20 to 30 million.
Wow. What does this mean?
And when you do a purse, by the way, Kristen, when you do a purse of 50 million in the LIV, their field is only 48 guys. Wow. If we did let's say a 30 million purse in the PGA Tour, well, they start off with, depending on the event, basically about 144 golfers. Then they make the cut, and they're paying usually like around 70 golfers.
What does this mean for the PGA tour professionals, the PGA of America, that just moved its headquarters here to North Texas into the Frisco area?
Okay, that's a lot of things. That's a great question. The PGA Tour and the PGA of America are two different organizations. They are not in relationship. They do not work together. They're not any financial obligations or anything. They work together to do the PGA Championship. That's a PGA of America event. So the Frisco facilities is the corporate headquarters of PGA of America. Those are basically those individuals that you meet at every driving range, golf course, country club. Those are those head pros, teaching pros. That's who they represent. Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer were key individuals that made the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour was created for specifically the golfer that wants to dedicate his life to playing competitive golf and for a purse. So they're two distinct properties. So this ruling today has nothing, it has no effect on the PGA of America. Absolutely none. The PGA Tour and on their players, that's where everybody's kind of waiting. Okay, what does this mean to them?
Right.
What is the season going to be? What is the purses going to be? Can I now go back and forth and play LIV? I mean, there's lots of questions that have to be answered.
For people who were unfamiliar of the lawsuits that were happening, what was the beef between the two?
Basically antitrust. They're saying that the PGA of Tour, it was working in a position basically like a monopoly, and that it was illegal and it was not fair to all of the people on the PGA Tour are individual contractors, and they have to make a commitment to the tour that they'll play them and they won't play anybody else. And so I'm not a lawyer, so a lot of the arguments are, is this fair? Is this for business, or is it antitrust? Is what it comes down to.
Now, a lot of the players that chose to not go to the LIV Tour stayed with the PGA. Did they have any reservations about going to LIV Tour because it's backed by the Saudi royal family? And how's that going to play into this merger, since they're going to be putting the money up?
Yes. Yes, there were players that have a moral element that this challenged them, and going forward, that's going to be interesting. However, you have to remember, when you turn on the PGA Tour every week, you're most likely going to see a Nike logo. Nike's product is all made in China, not a state leader in human rights. Okay, so some people say, well, there's a big difference in having labor elements and with the Saudi Arabians, with the killings of the journalists and other things that they do. It still comes down to human rights. So at a certain point, I think I hate to say this, but money talks. I mean, bottom line, money talks. I mean, if someone were to come into my life today and say, let's just use this as an example, and say to me, I'll give you guaranteed $1 million if for the next 2 years you never get into a pool. Okay, that sounds ridiculous, but for 2 years in Texas, it doesn't. I'm going to get in the pool, right? But I guarantee you, I'm not going to get in the pool. And they offered me $1 million. Yeah, I'm going to sit there and think about it. And then all of a sudden you tell me, well, it's Saudi Arabia. I mean, how much business is done in America with Saudi Arabians?
Very true. Joe Pogge is the host of the Smokin' Joe's Driving Range in Houston radio. Joe, thank you so much for the time.
David, Christine, it's always a pleasure. And in the coming weeks, months, this will probably become clear as to what's going on. It is a big announcement for golf. It's going to benefit golf really, really big. It is a very sad day for human rights. I mean, it's money took first place.